I grew up in Texas, right? And so I ended up having to take Spanish. And I was the only...
Senor Matty.
Mateo.
Mateo.
Me llamo Mateo. And so Senora Worley gets up in the front of the class. She goes, welcome to Spanish 2 honors. I am Senora Worley, and these are the last words I will speak in English for the rest of the semester. And she proceeds to teach the entire semester just in Spanish. And she's speaking fast, and I'm just like, in that class, I got a gentleman C.
Okay.
Right?
So
she liked me. She knew I was in over my head. I
Yeah.
tried hard. I was never going to get there. Like, I was outclassed by all my fellow students, so that I got the gentleman C.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
I will say, I think a lot of my bosses here at NBC give me the gentleman C.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I think. I think when they grade my performance, I think I got a lot of gentleman C's throughout my career.
Like a pass-fail?
Yeah, basically like, he's trying. He's almost there.
A little haircut, Matthew?
Yeah, got them all cut. There's not much to cut. There's not much to cut, but what I did have, I got. Well, thank you. Appreciate you.
Looking slick.
Thank you for looking up from your computer screen.
Yeah.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, feeling
Welcome
good?
back. Yeah, sure.
Love Hate Day.
It is
your
Love
favorite
Hate
day.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
It's
counting
always
down.
my favorite day.
We're running out of them.
Yeah, we are. There's only one left, actually. One left because I won't
real
do,
one, right?
I won't. No, not even one real one. I don't do one for week 18.
Right.
Fantasy playoffs end in week 17, so I'm not going to do one for week 18. So one left. One left.
Yep.
And then we will see what the future holds. But Connor, you're welcome. You're back. Are you?
I'm back.
Feeling?
I'm rested.
You were under the weather yesterday?
Yeah, I slept for 10 plus hours.
Wow,
Nice.
like
Yeah.
a baby.
Literally, like a child. It was wild.
that like?
But I feel, it was weird. It was almost like being frozen in time. Woke up very, very early in the morning and said, "It's Love Hate Day. I got to find a way."
that's
I
Now
feel
you're
great.
refreshed.
I wouldn't miss this.
Yeah, I've slept out. I slept 10 hours, I think, last week. I think I got it
Total?
last night.
There you go.
Yes,
It's been that kind of
exactly.
season.
Cumulative.
It's been that kind of
My
season.
body forced me into it.
We must
for
push
you.
on.
Yeah. Listen, we got plenty to do today. We are going to get through Week 16, Love Hate, but we got more than that. We got, of course, the Thursday Night Football preview for you for Denver, Broncos, Chargers. It's going to be a weird one, very tough game to bet, but we're going to find a way for this one. It's ugly, but we'll see how it goes. Total's only 41.5 points, by the way. But let's jump right into Love Hate running backs, and we start with Matthew's favorite duo, Sonic and Knuckles. Well, they might be on hiatus for a little bit. We did get to hear from Jahmyr Gibbs on what it's going to be like playing without his teammate and partner in crime, David Montgomery.
I think we're going to pick up where we left off. It was hard losing Demo. I don't know how long he's out, but for the time being, we got him, so we're going to play for him.
Has David said anything to you throughout this process, man? Just kind of encourage you, uplifting you. Scotty was saying he was still in good spirits or anything, but how's your communications been since he got injured?
Yeah, he just told me he loves me and just keeps hooping, and to keep hooping, so that's it.
Did you say keep hooping? What
Hopefully
was it?
pushing?
Okay, pushing?
I didn't hear it correctly
sounded,
either.
It sounded like pooping, and I'm like, keep pooping. What does that mean?
Maybe that's
Definitely not what he said.
Maybe that's the way Sonic and Knuckles roll. Keep pooping on.
By the way, did you notice? I wanted to say this. Right, they did that news of the Monty being out the air, right? We're showing a tweet for those of you listening of Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs both posted on the Instagram story following the news of Monty being out for the year. It's a cartoon of Sonic holding Knuckles. But what I found was interesting here is I bet you somebody else runs their social media accounts and like, oh, we're going to keep doing this because we've got some sort of deal with Sega or whoever, Nintendo. And but did you notice that Jahmyr?
How cynical of you, Matthew. How cynical.
I'll tell you this
More
much.
hate than love.
How about this? Did you see that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that quote? We just played sound from Jahmyr Gibbs. Literally, Jahmyr Gibbs is asked about David Montgomery being out, and you know what he does? He refers to him as Demo. He doesn't say like my guy Knuckles. He doesn't say my boy Knuckles. It's going to be tough to be Sonic out there without Knuckles. He said Demo, as in David Montgomery, short
Such
for
a
Dave Montgomery.
strange position you've
no
taken on
one
this.
likes this nickname.
Everyone
except
likes it.
No one likes it. It's trying way too hard, and even they've bailed on it. Even Jahmyr Gibbs has bailed on it. Here's my question, since you have young children, so maybe you know the answer to this. What's like the lamest character in the Sonic universe?
I'm not in that universe.
Do you know anyone? Like, what's I need
no
like
lame
an obscure.
characters. No.
What's it? Give me an obscure character in the Sonic universe because
not
that's who
deep
Craig
enough
Reynolds
into
is.
it.
That's who Craig Reynolds is.
Oh, wow.
Like
Unnecessary
so, like who's
Craig
like the
Reynolds
fourth
Greg Reynolds,
string?
friend of the show.
Yeah,
Yes.
he has
Friend of a friend of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Friend of a former friend of the show.
Yeah. Penn State Blake, for those that remember,
Former
always
friend of
used
the
to-
show, now we hate him.
Always used to claim that Craig Reynolds was like his best friend
Childhood
from high school,
friend.
childhood friend, high
Yeah.
school friend. And it was like, oh, Craig will come on the show. By the way, 3 years, Craig never showed up on the show. And now he's relevant again, obviously, with the injury to Demo. So I'm asking you,
Yeah.
like, give me like who's the fifth string hedgehog in that world?
I don't think anybody knows.
Anyway,
gonna
that's
do
who
some
Craig
Give me
Reynolds
some
is.
time. Give me some time on this.
Anyway, without Demo,
Thank you.
good news for Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy, Matthew, who comes in as RB1 for you. It's as simple as this. 3 games David Montgomery missed last season. Gibbs averaged 23 touches and 132 scrimmage yards in those games.
Massive workload for one of the best running backs in football coming up, to your point, Connor. And then also, by the way, you love this matchup against the Bears. Over the past 5 games, Chicago gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. They're giving up 168 yards to scrimmage yards to running backs in that stretch as well. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Gibbsy,
Oh,
Jay
that's right.
Gibbs.
Keep
wow.
pooping on.
That's a good one.
Keep on pooping?
He will keep on pooping all over his opponents.
Wow.
The number 1 running
Is that
back
a way
in
to? Is that the new
fantasy.
Sorry,
juke
Chicago
move?
Bears fans. Maybe you might want to go to this game.
Yeah. All right,
Commanders
I got
fans learn the
It is.
hard
It's
way.
like, didn't you remember Triumph, the insult comic dog? Remember Triumph?
Nope.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
not.
Of course.
No one knows what that is. I've got some names for us.
Wait a minute, hold on for a second. You guys don't know who Triumph
No,
is?
I really
No idea.
don't.
I was born in 1992, Matthew.
Yeah.
He
91 for me.
he's still around, but he was a huge staple of the Conan O'Brien show. How is this possible?
No.
The
Is it
control
me?
room is perplexed right
How do
now.
you guys not know Triumph anyway?
No.
It's whatever. So Jahmyr Gibbs would be like,
Probably you.
like the Bears defense from
All
me
right.
to poop on.
I've got some names for us from the Sonic the Hedgehog universe. Cream the Rabbit, Rouge the Bat, Miles Tails Prower, Vector the Crocodile. I've never heard of any of these.
No, of course not.
Blaze the Cat.
So,
I've heard of Sonic and Knuckles. That's
Sonic
about
and Knuckles. So who's like a bruising type name? Because that's what Reynolds is.
it. Vector the Crocodile, Blaze the Cat, Fang the Sniper. Who are
He's not Fang. He's not Vector. He's definitely not Blaze.
Metal Sonic,
Metal?
Big the Cat,
Oh,
Dr.
Metal Sonic.
Dr. Eggman.
What?
Dr. Eggman.
Dr. Eggman's
there you
a
go.
key character in the show. So
Okay.
yeah, that might.
So not Craig
yeah,
Reynolds.
He's a bad guy though.
Or Jared. Okay.
Yeah.
Or Jared Goff on a bad day.
All right, one more time. Vector, maybe? Is it Vector?
Vector the crocodile is interesting.
Yeah, Vector. Vector the crocodile. Vector. He's Vector.
Okay.
So, as long as we're doing this dumb thing, Sonic Knuckles, he's Vector. There you go. I've decided. Craig
See, now
Reynolds
you're
is
fully
Vector.
leaned back into it.
No, I'm not.
It's here to stay.
No, this is my way of
taking
making
off.
fun of it.
Oh wow.
There you go. There you go.
is-
That
who
is
is this?
Triumph the Insult
I've
Comic Dog.
Never seen that in my life.
Yeah, the 240p quality tells me this was in 1979.
By the way, I highly recommend looking up some YouTube videos of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. It is well worth your 2 times.
I will.
And
You
anyone
too.
else that is not familiar with, he is hilarious. Like the characters, it's a puppet voiced by Robert Smigel. It is hilarious. All right. Anyway,
Okay.
let's you know what's hilarious? I'll tell you what's hilarious is the New Orleans Saints trying to stop Josh Jacobs this weekend.
That's going to be a treat.
Yeah, that is going to be hilarious. Josh Jacobs makes the. I'll keep this show on track. Don't you worry, Connor. You sit back. I got this. That's
great.
All right. Yeah.
I'm resting again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Veterans
Fine.
rest.
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
3. I earned that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
You and Vector. All right. Here's the thing about Josh Jacobs. Massive workload, right? Since week 8, he's had only 2 games. Only 2 games with fewer than 22 touches. Running backs that get massive workloads against the Saints produce, right? If you've seen at least 15 touches against New Orleans, you're averaging over 22 fantasy points per game. And 10 of those 11 running backs who saw that kind of workload scored at least 1 touchdown. Bad weather expected. It should be like snowy Green Bay, frozen tundra in Lambeau Field kind of weather. It's a Josh Jacobs type game. They're heavy favorites here. I don't know who's going to be starting for the Saints. It doesn't matter, honestly, whether they roll Jake Haener back out there or Spencer Rattler. Like, this is going to be a tough day at the office for the New Orleans offense. I think the Packers are up. I think they're up big. And I think Josh Jacobs has a monster day. He's my running back 3 this week.
Yeah, Packers are 14-point favorites in that game, and it is trending towards 14.5. So Monday Night Football should be a fitting encore to Falcons Raiders, Packers Saints. Great follow-up.
Yeah, when Green Bay's in control, great news for Josh Jacobs. In their last 6 wins, he's had 20-plus points in each of them. So 14.5-point spread, they should be in control. Some crazy spreads this week, by the way.
Yeah, right.
A lot of we could be inching towards a lot of double-digit spreads closing into the weekend. Our next running back on the love list is James Conner, who over the past 4 weeks, Carolina, his opponent, is allowing 160 rushing yards per game, almost 6 yards per carry to running backs, Jay. As much as it's been a nice story for their offense with Bryce playing a lot better, the Carolina defense, there's been no reinforcements on the way.
Yeah, and I think the Panthers in general are probably a little exposed last week against the Cowboys. They go into that as 3-point favorites. They get blown out. So you suspect that the Cardinals will have game script in this one. They are 5-point favorites, and James Conner with game script. This offense now, this rushing offense, ever since Kyler Murray came back for the second half of last season, this has been an elite rushing offense. This is the hidden benefit of Kyler Murray, which Matthew will not get any credit for. As a ride or die candidate, as he's providing NFL value, but not as much fantasy value, at least relatively to that. So James Conner, the most underrated man in football, should produce
as a man who, planted the flag for Kyler Murray, James Conner's workload has driven me crazy, to be perfectly honest. Maybe lose what little hair I had left. And you couldn't ask for a better matchup. I mean, Conner's massive workload, top 10 among running backs in touches per game since week 7. And by the way, against the Carolina Panthers, there's been only 2 times this year. Literally only 2 times this year, the Panthers have allowed fewer than 20 fantasy points to opposing quarterback. Conner coming off the massive game from last week as well. So it is frustrating for those of us that were riding Kyler Murray for so many weeks this year. But James Conner is a top 5 play for me this week.
Let's look at a couple others receiving votes. James Cook against the Patriots. By the way, the Bills have the highest implied team total this week. That's going to be important for all their fantasy-relevant players. Isaac Guerendo, he didn't practice Wednesday with a hamstring, so keep an eye on that one going up into the weekend. Dealing with the Niners backfield has been a fantasy headache all year, and it will continue to be. Alexander Mattison, because he's got Jacksonville, and Tyjae Spears, who handles a decent pass game role for the Titans. That is Mason Rudolph getting the start, by the way, for the Titans in that game. He's got the Colts, Matthew.
Well, yeah, and the Colts allow the 5th most fantasy points to running backs. Pollard's been dealing with those foot and ankle injuries, maybe a little bit banged up as well. So Spears comes in at running back 34, has some flex value this week. Madison's in there. Look, again, you got to be a little desperate as well. But I'm at 27 this week. Sincere McCormick and Zamir White both on IR. Amir Abdullah has never been a guy that they usually use between the tackles. So in a game against the Jaguars in which they should be competitive here, and the expectation, by the way, also is that Aiden O'Connell will start for the Raiders. So you expect at least some level of competency for Las Vegas' offense here. Madison had 4 games this year where he was the lead running back, weeks 5 through 8, and he averaged over 13 fantasy points per game. So I think there's some potential flex value for Alexander Mattison. You mentioned Guerendo. Again, it's always a little nervous because I feel like every time you start a Niners running back, they get hurt and they go out. And you mentioned the foot injury, so we'll track that as we head towards Sunday. But since CMC was placed on IR, he's getting basically 80% of the Niners running back touches. And finally, I have James Cook as a top 10 play against a Patriots team that has given up at least 17 fantasy points to a running back in 3 straight.
Yeah, Alexander Mattison is kind of interesting, which is not a sentence that I feel super comfortable uttering aloud, but Mattison, just with this matchup and with the fact that there's just no one left in the backfield for the Raiders, like Amir Abdullah will get pass catching work, you suspect, but with Sincere McCormack gone, and with this Jags team that is very incentivized to lose, and I think that as much as the Raiders are also incentivized to lose, I don't necessarily think that's Antonio Pierce's style. Like, I think they're going to try and go all out and win the game.
It's good for his job now.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, exactly. I mean, that in weird, they both sort of are, but it does feel like that Antonio Pierce has like a fire and intensity that I don't want to say Doug Peterson doesn't. But by the way, maybe Shad Khan has said to Coach Peterson, "You're good. Don't worry about next year. We believe, a bunch of bad injuries, the general manager's made some questionable moves, like, you're good." Now, I don't know if that's happened or not, but I don't know. What is the line in this game? By the way, I haven't even looked at this one.
The answer is it doesn't matter.
I know. Well, that's why I haven't looked at it.
Close to pick when I saw it.
It's Raiders minus 1.
Raiders minus 1.
So it already moved a little bit since open.
Yeah, it's a blockbuster. 4:25 p.m. Eastern. Set your alarms.
This could be the Travis Hunter, well, on the Raiders side, the Shadur Sanders Bowl.
Yeah. Right.
Like this game has massive draft implications, but I agree for the coaching side. I think Antonio Pierce is legitimately coaching for his job. Doug Peterson, I kind of think that one's been written.
The Falcons-Raiders games had massive repercussions for everything
there.
They went from the number 1 pick. Well, if that Hail Mary connects at the end, I think they're in the 7 slot. and now they're in the 1 slot.
Yeah, the volatility of about 1 through 7 in this draft right now on any win is insane.
It's crazy, which just makes your Jets' victory last week so great.
It feels awesome.
Congratulations.
Yes. Whenever you could beat the Jacksonville Jaguars and Mac Jones, you got a victory lap.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I just go back to, I just remember whatever it was, I think it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. Washington, when they weren't called the Commanders back then, but Washington, it's a lost season, it's awful. And all they have to do is lose to Miami. All they have to do is lose to Miami.
And
Miami,
Burrow.
and yes, and if they lose to Miami, they get the number 1 pick and Joe Burrow. And Miami goes for a 2-point conversion. All you have to do is let them convert it. But we play the greatest defense that we've ever played all season. We shut down that 2-point conversion. We win the game against Miami, and of course, then we don't get Joe Burrow.
But to be
Instead, we
fair,
get Chase Young.
To be fair, Chase Young has been an awesome commander, and is going to be in the
Lifelong.
Commanders Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yes, Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
Him and Sam Howell
Yeah, I mean, yes.
locked arms together
Chase,
walking into it.
Chase
It worked
Young,
out. You had Jaden Daniels.
Chase Young wasn't bad, and
He's fine.
he got injured, and then I don't know. There was
it
some
worked
coaching.
out.
It didn't work out.
Jaden Daniels is awesome 5 years later.
Yeah.
Joe Burrow
Worked
is
out in the end.
a
Just
top
the
3 quarterback
winding
in football.
All
path
due
to get
respect,
there.
as much as I love Jaden Daniels, I wouldn't have minded having Joe Burrow the last 5 years.
Sure.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, the next
that would have
5.
been preferable.
And the next 5.
Yeah, but you got to have a year of Sam Howell to whet the
One we'll
appetite.
forever remember.
Yeah, indeed.
Future Hall of Famer Sam Howell.
Sam Howell getting sacked 1,000,000 times. That's all I remember. This guy getting clobbered.
Oh, yeah. Ron Rivera inherited the number 2 draft pick, and when he left, we had the number 2 draft pick. There you go.
Full circle.
Full circle.
To be fair, Ron Rivera didn't know that his team had been eliminated from the playoffs when they got eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah. And to be fair, Ron Rivera didn't know Emmanuel Forbes was about 155 pounds as a first-round
It's hard to ascertain that information, though.
To be fair, no one can truly calculate the amount of damage Ron Rivera did during his 4 years as the head coach
2-time
and
coach of
in
the year.
charge of player personnel in Washington. But here's the other thing: honestly, Rivera had a bad run, but truthfully, it all goes back to Snyder. Because the reason they had to hire Rivera is because the culture was so toxic and they were so under siege from everything, and it was such an awful workplace environment because he's such a terrible human being. They had to hire Ron Rivera because, regardless of what you think about his football acumen, everyone agrees Ron Rivera is like a quality human being, like an above reproach, awesome human being, and so. That was what it was. They hired Rivera because, no one can question us now because now we've got this,
respected football man.
Respected football
That was the
man,
point.
family
It was a
man.
great story.
Yes. Great story for him. He just, should not have been in
didn't
charge
work.
of a football team's personnel.
All right, the hate list is headlined by Joe Mixon. He's got the Chiefs who have been.
It's a nice segue into the hate list.
Yeah.
I'm still not over
still
it.
Furious about it.
We could have had Joe Burrow, Connor.
I know. You were close.
We should have had Joe Burrow.
You were on the podium, second place.
Chase Young.
Chase Young.
It's going to be part of Saints Packers on Monday
By the
Night
way,
Football.
Chase Young, the best draft pick of Rivera's career, but Emmanuel Ford's, Jamin Davis, all the first-round picks, Jahan Dotson. His first-round picks have just been brutal.
Well, at least with Jahan Dotson, you let somebody come up and
get Chris
and
Olave.
take Chris Olave.
Yes, that's correct.
So
Christian Gonzalez was there, and we had a need in the secondary. We said, forget Christian Gonzalez. Give us Emmanuel Forbes. 155-pound, burnable Emmanuel Forbes.
All right, back to Joe Mixon, who headlines the hate list. He's got
Sure.
the Chiefs. They've allowed the fewest fantasy points to running backs this season. Jay, we've talked about how this has become a true pass funnel defense for the Chiefs. That's bad news for Mixon.
Indeed. Also, bad news for Mixon is that he's banged up. He had to leave the game
Yep.
last
Line
week,
stinks.
and now he gets this Chiefs defense that ever since Jaylen Watson has gone down, they've been atrocious against the pass, but very solid against the run. So this is going to be a good test for Bobby Slowick. See if he can stop pressing the run button and actually throw the ball down the field like he should to Nico Collins against a suspect defense. But Joe Mixon, it's still Joe Mixon. He's still going to get volume. He's still starting him in every league, but expectations should perhaps be
here's
tempered.
here's the other concern is, will he get volume? Again, if he's slightly nicked up, and we've talked about this earlier in the week, the Texans are locked in more or less to the 4 seed. There's a lot of different things would have to happen for them to get to the 3. They're not getting to the 1 or the 2. It's literally the only chance they have to improve is to the 3 seed, and a lot of things would need to happen, some of which aren't in their control. So they're more or less going to be the 4 seed, and if you're sitting here and you're DeMeco Ryans, I don't know, but you've got this running back who's had a massive workload this year. He's closer to 30 than he's closer to 20, and you have been riding him all season long, and he's banged up a little bit. He's already missed time with injury earlier this year. Like, how much work do you want to give him against the Chiefs? I agree with you, Jay. If you've been riding Joe Mixon, it's hard to bench him in the playoffs, and you're just going to hope that he falls into the end zone here. But love-hate is all about expectations, and my expectations are lowered for Mixon against this Chief defense that has allowed one running back this year to rush for more than 65 yards against them. And that was Jerome Ford, who had the big 62-yard run. Didn't do anything other than, but like he just managed to break one against them. But last week, but I don't know. It's on a short week here as well. I just, if I told you he's averaged 2 yards per carry over the last, in 3 of the last 5 games, you'd say, well, that's not good. And I'd say, well, I'm actually incorrect, but he's actually under 2 yards per carry in 3 of the last 5 games. Like it's been the inefficiency's been masked by volume, and I'm not convinced given the nature of where their team is in the playoff hunt and for the postseason and the fact that he's dealing with injuries, I'm not convinced he gets the volume he needs. So he's a RB2, a shaky RB2 for me this week.
I like your description of saying he's closer to 30 than 20. Gave yourself a real kind of 5-year window there. A lot of margin for error.
Because I didn't know I think he's like 29.
He's 28.
Okay, 28 or 29. Yeah. So I wasn't sure exactly.
Like
so I figured that's
good
a little
device.
Let me just show you here. That's a little TV trick that I just did right there, because I knew that he was like towards the older side of 20, but I didn't know if he was 28 or 29. I didn't want to admit that I didn't know that. So what I did is I gave myself some wiggle room there where I sounded like I knew what I was talking about.
That's why you're the best, Barry.
And I was correct without having to be very specific. So speaking in generality sometimes can be helpful for you, especially when you're on a streaming service.
That's the kind of stuff you do, like when you earn the birthday day off.
Yes.
That's how you earn the birthday day off.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right. December 29th. Does anyone mark it down?
No, I'm working. It's fantasy. It's a Sunday.
It's a Sunday.
Fantasy football pregame and football night in America.
So you get double shift to make up for all those birthdays
I'll be there
off.
the whole time. And by the way, my entire family will be in Florida. So my birthday will be spent, here with you lovely people, and then in a hotel room, sad and alone.
Yeah. I look forward to you bringing up things like Triumph the Dog and Rod Carew and Humphrey Bogart or whatever other old stuff that we haven't consumed.
Triumph is not old in the way that Rod Carew or Humphrey Bogart is.
Yeah. Same world to me, Matthew.
Oh my God.
Time's flying by.
Shout out to Rod Carew.
Producer Steven, get in my ear. Do you know who Triumph is? You must have, because
no, he has no idea. He said the control room was completely perplexed.
Yes.
It's a younger control room.
That's on you.
It's good energy, a young control room.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that same pixelation was the same that we saw John Travolta in Grease. Like, that's the kind of era that we're dealing with.
The only person on our staff that might be with you on this one is Big Show, and he's out today.
Big Show's out today.
Like, you really need a Big Show here today for this one.
I'm scooting past the camera. Producer Damien, do you know who Triumph the Insult Comic Dog is?
Hard no.
He's shaking his head. He's shaking his head no. I can't believe
Triumph the
I
Comic
cannot
Dog.
believe I'm alone on an island on this one.
Ian does.
You do? Okay, Ian does. All right, we got somebody. All right.
Yeah, you really needed that.
Yeah, I really
Person
did.
number 28 that we asked.
All
All right. Najee Harris next up on the hate
Somebody
list.
everyone knows.
Just like
Najee
Joe
Harris.
Mixon, Najee Harris is running into a pass funnel defense, and that is the Baltimore Ravens, Jay. They are allowing a league low 3.4 yards per carry to running backs this season.
Yeah, I think that George Pickens is just vitally important to this offense. Yeah. We saw that without Pickens against the Eagles, there was just no oxygen in the offense. And I suspect that it's going to be a similar situation against the Ravens, where it's going to be Najee and Warren continuing to split time, and you're really going to be dependent on Najee getting into the end zone, I think, to provide value. Just like try and visualize the game. Does it feel like Najee Harris is going to go 15 for 95 and a touchdown against the Ravens? Like, I think it's just going to be hugely difficult for him to be startable unless you're counting on him getting a touchdown. And by the way, when they played the Ravens last time, the team didn't score a touchdown. They kicked 6 field goals.
Right.
So concerns for the Steelers offense all around. And they're 6.5-point dogs in this one now.
It doesn't feel like Pickens is trending towards playing. No. He missed practice on Wednesday, and so nothing seems to indicate. So to your point, like there's no reason to not stack the box against them. And given how good Baltimore is against the run, there's no reason to, I don't know if they even need to stack. He's also just not involved in the passing, Graham. Two or fewer targets in 4 of the past 6 for Najee Harris. So they'll try to run him in the line, but I think when they do throw to running backs, it'll be more Jaylen Warren. So He's running back 28 for me. He's another one of these guys that you hope falls into the end zone because otherwise hard to see him having big fantasy value against the Ravens.
Our last running back, Isiah Pacheco. Matthew, hasn't been pretty since he returned from IR. Under 7 points per game since he's been back.
Yeah, by the way, and it's not a good matchup here against Houston. Texans, since week 9, allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to opposing running backs. There have been only 2 running backs during that stretch that have scored 13 or more fantasy points against Houston, and both saw 19 or more touches. The concern is since Pacheco's come back, like he hasn't gotten that full workload that we expect. Kareem Hunt has continued to get involved. Now you see it here on your screen. 7 rush attempts, 14 rush attempts, 13 rush attempts. Basically gets 1 or 2 catches a game. So he's in that 13 to 15 range in terms of touches, which I think you can expect. But again, the only 2 running backs that have even scored 13 points against the Texans both saw at least 19 touches. So I just don't know that the volume will be there for Pacheco against a tough Texans defense. He's running back 31. By the way, as long as we're talking about this game, the expectation here is that Marquise Hollywood Brown is going to make his debut for the Chiefs, which is nice. I got some questions about this just as long as we're talking about this game very quickly. You're not starting Hollywood Brown. I don't mind picking him up and seeing, but you're not starting a guy in his first game back with a gimpy Mahomes. Who knows how many snaps he plays as well. So, but again, that's just another mouth to feed in that Chiefs offense. So hard to see Pacheco getting the workload he needs. He's outside my top 30 for the week.
You would hope that Hollywood Brown's return helps create some space for the run game, but you would think Xavier Worthy does that. So I don't sit here and argue this is going to change everything.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just because Hollywood Brown runs his routes in the field of play versus
the sideline. The old CFL argument.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing you could point to. But yeah, I mean, Mahomes doesn't really chuck it deep anymore. I don't know how much of it's like teams are just playing him back. They're just playing cover 2 and they're just too deep and I don't know.
Feels like it's been 3 years since the Chiefs were good, and
they've won Super Bowls in that time.
I know it is. It's so bizarre. It's so and you said you like the Texans +3 in this one, right?
Yeah, I do. I think that the Chiefs, the underrated thing with them is the offensive line is just banged up. They don't have a good situation at left tackle, and this isn't the team to have offensive line problems against with the way that Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, one of the best edge rushing combinations. I mean, the Texans, in terms of just pure edge rushing, they might only be second to the Steelers, who I think have the best D-line in the game at the moment. But yeah, I think that at some point, the Chiefs, we keep on expecting them to flip the switch, and they just haven't for 2 years outside of the playoff run where they won the Super Bowl. But no, I think the Chiefs are in some trouble in this one.
Yeah, games in Kansas City. If there's one, that's one positive for them as well. But yeah, I'm nervous about Pacheco in this one.
We move on to the pass catchers, which is headlined by Mike Evans, and we got to hear from his quarterback Baker Mayfield, who is very aware of Mike Evans' streak of 1,000 yards.
I'm thinking about it more than Mike is. He helped himself out though, put a little chunk into it. But yeah, it's. All in all, winning's the most important part, but he's a huge part of this offense, and so he makes a huge difference in the explosive aspect of this offense. So trying to get the ball some way, somehow, but not forcing it. That's not what this offense is all about. Still need to let the defense dictate where the ball is going to go based on coverage and what they're doing. But yeah, still moving Mike around. He's still our number one guy.
Love-hate pass catchers. Baker Mayfield very aware at all times of what's going on with his teammates, and that's good news for Mike Evans, who needs 251 yards over his final 3 games. That's under 84 yards a game for his, get this, Matthew, 11th consecutive 1,000-yard season. Just unbelievable consistency from Big Mike.
Yeah, you weren't here yesterday. You were sleeping, but we talked about it on the show yesterday as well, and we talked about the fact that, how we expect, in addition to wanting to get the record, and oh, by the way, he's good, and Baker's playing at a high level, and they throw a ton. It's a great matchup against Dallas, right? Over the last 4 weeks, the Cowboys give up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. They've given up at least 20 points to a wide receiver in 3 of the last 4. So if you're telling me, okay, one wide receiver for the Buccaneers gets 20 points, it's probably going to be Mike Evans. Trayvon Diggs out for the year as well. That doesn't help this secondary. And so Just feels like this is going to be another big Mike Evans game. He's a top 10 play for me this week.
Yeah, I think the key here too is that it's years now that the Cowboys defense has just been so dependent on Micah Parsons getting pressure. And previously DeMarcus Lawrence, and when they don't get pressure, they're extremely vulnerable in the back end, particularly with Diggs out and not really being himself this year anyway. And the Bucs, their offensive line, that's the unheralded great part of this team. They've been awesome at mitigating quick pressure, giving Baker Mayfield time. When Baker Mayfield has a clean pocket, he's awesome. He's been awesome his whole career when he's not under pressure. So everything lines up for a big Mike Evans day.
Brian Thomas Jr. next on our list. Career day against the Jets last week. And Matthew, things have been good since Mac Jones has taken over for Thomas Jr. in terms of target share. 30.8% throughout these 4 games with Mac Jones.
And you don't blame him. This guy is awesome.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
Where did you have him coming into the on your big draft board?
He was my, I think, 11th overall player.
Wow.
I admittedly was much higher on him than most people, and for good reason.
Yeah, rightfully so. It's proven out correctly. I knew that you liked him. I didn't realize you liked him that much. Yeah, I know. We talked about him in the pre-draft process as well. Since week 11, he's been the 8th best wide receiver in a points per game basis. He's actually gotten 67%. Almost 3/4 of the team's end zone targets in that span. Good matchup against the Raiders, who are tied for the most touchdowns allowed to wide receivers over the last month as well. Wide receivers that, by the way, get that kind of target share against the Raiders, so 20% or more target share against Vegas, they're averaging over 17 fantasy points per game. Whether it's Mac Jones, whether it's Trevor Lawrence, it doesn't seem to matter who is throwing the ball. There's not a lot of competition. They will throw it, and they're not scared to throw it to Brian Thomas. And when they do, more often than not, he comes down with it. He's my wide receiver 12 this week.
Probably going to be a second-round pick in drafts next year, I would have thought. Brian Thomas.
He's got a chance.
I would probably more wide in the 3rd round. Like, I'm trying to think, like, I think he's going to be a top. He's definitely going to be I'm actually going to do my way too early rankings for next week. That'll be the open to next week's love-hate. So I haven't really sat down and thought about it. But, like, off the top of my head, he's definitely a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. He's probably somewhere in that 10 to 15 range, I would think, when you start thinking it through. You're assuming Malik Neighbors gets a better quarterback, right? There's a lot of guys there that you sort of you start thinking through. And
how about this?
Rashee Rice. I mean, if Rashee Rice is back,
him or Marvin Harrison next year. That's the hardest. I think the hardest
question.
question.
I think it's Brian Thomas.
I don't know if it's that simple though.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, right. And anyway, like, there's going to be a, I mean, do you expect?
I reckon you go MHJ ride or die next year. Just double down on the Cardinals offense.
Buy back in the Arizona offense.
And take McBride the year after. We'll just do it every year.
Trey Benson year 4.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, I mean, like, there's other, like, again, like, think about the JSN breakout. Think about, like, the Jerry Jeudy breakout, depending on who's quarterbacking the Browns next year.
Right, like Jordan Addison right now.
Jordan Addison's been unbelievable as well. Like,
I like Brian Thomas more than all these guys.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I get it, but I'm just saying, like, there's like, him or George Pickens. Like, you can make an argument, assuming Russ is back with the Steelers, like, you can make an argument for, because, again, the Jags next year, in theory, they'll have, either Christian Kirk back or, they'll have Gabe Davis back, or they'll do something.
Well, Travis Hunter out there is a good chance.
I mean, so, I don't know. Long way to go. Long way to go.
We're just getting you working early.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about it, right? I mean, like, Chris Olave will be back, right? I mean, like, so there's, anyway, I think he's a top 15 wide receiver. I'm not convinced he's a top 10 just yet, but I love him. I mean, I love,
there's lots of love.
He's ridiculous, and he's got to be a top 5 wide receiver in Dynasty right now. Like, if you're drafting a Dynasty
no doubt.
draft, he's got to be, big fan of BTR. By the way, I saw a rumor last night, as long as we're talking about next year and we're all over the place, Garrett Wilson of the Commanders in the offseason. Have you seen that rumor?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
I don't know where that started from.
A Commanders fan account.
Yeah, there you go.
Seems a thing that won't happen.
Yeah.
Well, the actual rumor is that Wilson will demand a trade in the offseason.
Right. And if
so that's legitimate.
Right. And if you're the new GM of the Jets, the way you warm up to the fan base is you trade the best player.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Things going well for the Jets. Yeah. Been a good year.
That's a really good idea.
Well, if you have to burn everything down and start over, and somebody's going to give you a high draft pick,
you start over with Garrett Wilson.
I agree. He's like 24, 23.
Yeah.
Oh, man. DJ Moore.
Hope springs eternal.
Next up on our pass catchers list, since Shane Waldron was fired, Jay, DJ Moore is averaging 18 points per game. That's a 5-game stretch, so this is for real right now.
No, it's been for real, and they're not very good, so they've got to keep throwing the ball with Caleb Williams. And the beauty about DJ Moore is that it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is, Chicago Bears just going to throw wide receiver screens. It's what they love to do. It seems they do it every second play. I don't understand the infatuation with it, but a lot of the time it is to DJ Moore. And now we have a real 5-game sample since Waldron is gone, scoring 18 points per game. He's the clear guy that you want in that offense, so DJ Moore.
And it hasn't just, the fantasy points per game since Waldron is gone hasn't just been like big plays. Like 27% target share for DJ Moore in a game in which we expect the Bears to be down and throwing against a Lions secondary that is so beat up. Carlton Davis, Khalil Dorsey, both out for the year as well. I mean, you might be starting for them. It's like, it is, hey, Craig Reynolds, get out there on defense as well. Like, it's dicey there in Detroit on the defensive side of the ball.
George Kittle, our tight end on the list, he's got the Dolphins, who they've been brutal against tight ends, especially since Week 8. They're allowing the 5th most yards per game to tight ends right now, Matthew. So George Kittle comes in as tight end 2 for you.
Yeah, only twice over the past 9 games has he been below a 22% target share, and one of them was that snow game against Buffalo, just crazy. So Kittle should have a very nice game against Miami. They've struggled against tight ends. They've really struggled against elite tight ends. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, both had 20 or more fantasy points against this Dolphins defense. We, again, with Guerendo, with the running game a little bit banged up, with Deebo Samuel just seemingly having hit a wall, this passing offense is really Jawan Jennings and George Kittle. And again, you think about sort of the Dolphins, and they're good on the perimeter. You think about Jalen Ramsey, like they're good on the perimeter, but middle of the field feels like an area where you can attack Miami, and that's what I expect them to do. As you mentioned, he's my tight end 2 this week.
Yep, probably going to get more quick stuff as well, just the rest of the season. Trent Williams looks like he's not going to come back this year. That really hurts them in terms of the longer, deeper developing stuff, which I think will hurt Jawan Jennings more than anyone else. And Kittle's role will always be safe in that offense.
Some others receiving votes, Jaxon Smith-Njigba enjoying his breakout season. That's assuming, of course, Geno Smith plays, which it looks like he's trending the right way.
But there's another guy talking about wide receivers for next year. Especially, by the way, if Tyler Lockett retires or moves on.
The end there, and JSN's target share is pretty cemented.
Yeah.
Stop trying to force Tyler Lockett into retirement just because he screwed you in fantasy.
Tyler Lockett, I still want to play.
I don't think he's going to retire.
You know what? All I know is I'm playing this week and you are not. So it ended up all working
Tyler
out.
Lockett is closer to 30 than 40, I believe.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a good way to do it.
That
He's
is fair.
32 years old.
But just, you know what?
He's
All is forgiven Tyler Lockett because I am still playing fantasy football and Jay is not. So that loss to you in the regular season ended up not mattering.
Yeah.
I'm in the semifinals against Stupid Dev. Stupid Dev, by the way, smart Dev.
You got your work cut out for you.
Sneaky Dev. Dev picked up Michael Penix on Monday afternoon in our league before the sneaky
Might have got tipped
Dev.
off.
Probably. He probably has inside
sources.
sources.
Wonder who could have done that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
No.
That'd be amazing.
No collusion.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not
fine.
rooting for anyone.
This should
I'm
be
a neutral party.
new bit for you. If you don't like someone, just talk about how they
Yes.
might retire next year. I hear Emmanuel Forbes is thinking about retiring from sport.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna. I don't think Emmanuel Forbes is gonna get that chance. I think it's gonna be done for him. Yeah, exactly. I forgot that. I know you have sources in the Penix camp.
That's not true.
Yes, you absolutely do. Because I sat next to one at your wedding. You absolutely do.
Oh, man, that's good.
That's all right. I have Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts. I did not need Michael Penix in my matchup with the sneaky Dev, smart Dev. Anyway, JSN very quickly, assuming Geno plays. Minnesota bottom 5 in terms of receptions and yards allowed to the slot this season. So JSN is borderline top 20 play for me this week. You mentioned Jacoby Myers as well. With Aiden O'Connell under center, and he's expected to play 30% target share. We like Devontae Smith in games without Dallas Goedert. He's got a 31% target share this year. He's a top 30 play for me. How about David Njoku? Like, one of the things that we don't love about DTR, if there's one positive, I should say, to Dorian Thompson-Robinson starting, is that in the 3 career starts he's had, Njoku has a 27% target share. Now, we don't know yet officially that he's going to play this week, but if Njoku can make it back, I think he's a top 10 play for me this week. And if you need a tight end if you need a tight end streamer, think about getting some Strange.
Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, that is Brenton Strange. Think about
New Evan Ingram.
Yeah. New Evan Ingram
12
as well.
targets, fired up.
Had a 28% target share
It's
last
insane.
week. And Vegas, since week 7, allows the most yards per game to opposing tight ends. So, yeah.
Okay.
Go get yourself some Strange.
Dr.
Brenton Strange, of
Yes.
course.
Dr. Strange level, how I learned to stop worrying and love the
Tight-
Jacksonville
obscure tight- obscure tight ends.
tight ends.
Yeah.
The hate list for pass catchers.
For the record, a Stanley Kubrick film is a much more ancient reference than Triumph, the Intel comic
the
doc.
difference is I didn't imply that Connor Rodgers had seen the film.
No, I understand, but I'm just. Doctor Strangelove is an old movie.
So like 1969?
I think it was in the 50s.
Yeah, you might be right. I'm not sure.
Somebody look it up.
1964.
1964, I'm being told. All right, fair enough.
Jerry Jeudy headlines our hate list for pass catchers. This is the DTR effect, unfortunately. In 3 career starts, DTR's averaging just 140 passing yards. He's only got 1 passing touchdown in his career. We are so sorry, Jerry Jeudy fantasy managers that are in the semifinal. We promise you get one good bit out of this, and that's that you drink free today. here
Yeah,
at the Happy Hour
absolutely. I mean,
Bar.
you were riding Jerry Jeudy, and you're like, I got a superstar, I got a league winner, and then Kevin Stefanski said, not so fast. It's going to be DTR, no longer Jameis Winston, so Jerry Jeudy, you now go to the hate list. You're outside the top 30 only once in the 3 games.
Retire.
You can retire now.
But Jerry Jeudy,
You may retire.
you can retire now.
I hear Jerry Jeudy might retire next season.
I heard he might retire
We want more
Saturday.
Cedric Tillman targets. Jerry Jeudy, you have to retire.
I heard he might retire on Saturday. Look, DTR started 3 games,
ridiculous.
and only once in those 3 games did any wide receiver for the Browns score double-digit fantasy points, and that was Elijah Moore, who had 12. So it's going to be, even though it's on the road at Cincinnati and the Bengals defense, in theory, this year hasn't scared you, I'm more scared about just what this offense is going to look like. I think it'll be run heavy. I think it'll be conservative. And I can't imagine starting Jerry Jeudy in a semifinal this week with DTR under center. And Njoku is the only guy, and again, if he didn't qualify at tight end, I wouldn't even say Njoku, but it's just too much risk, too much variance, not enough sample size on DTR doing anything other than being ineffective for me to risk it in the fantasy playoffs.
Jaylen Waddle also on the hate list here. Jay, the Eagles have been phenomenal against wide receivers in the second half of the season. Since week 9, there's no defense better than besides the 49ers than them against wide receivers. Bad spot for Jaylen Waddle, especially he's banged up, knee injury going into this game.
Yeah, and I think the sneaky thing out of last week for the Niners is catastrophic a viewing experience and a result as that game was against the Rams. Their defense is healthy again. Nick Bosa is back, Dre Greenlaw back, Javarius Ward is back in the lineup as well. Hufanga, Fred Warner is continuing to play on his ankle. I think this is going to be a pretty solid defense the rest of the way. And to your point, Connor, they've been really good against opposing wide receivers, and Jaylen Waddle's banged up too.
Exactly. Another guy on the hate list
Quentin
is
Johnston.
QJ tonight. Don't love him. Expected to be shadowed by Patrick Surtain. Wide receivers facing the Broncos have scored on a league low 2.5% of their targets. QJ, by the way, in every game he hasn't scored a touchdown this year, averaging under 7 fantasy points per game. He is really touchdown dependent, and again, we talked about it. It is hard to score a touchdown if you're a wide receiver facing the Broncos. He's outside my top 40.
Finally, Jake Ferguson, our tight end on the hate list here. The Bucs have allowed only 1 touchdown to a tight end over the past 6 games. Matthew, tough spot if you need to start Jake Ferguson in the fantasy playoffs.
Week 1 was literally the last time Jake Ferguson saw an end zone target in this offense. In the 2 games since he returned, he's got only a 17% target share. Yes, Cooper Rush has looked better, but I don't know that it's a great matchup against Tampa Bay. They've been pretty good against tight ends as well, so outside my top 12 for the week.
Yep, didn't give me much last week, Jake Ferguson, and that's why Chubby Magic is on the Chubby couch.
And we're playing for 5th place. It'll be fun.
Okay.
Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
We're taking our first break.
Place battle goes.
All right, I will, Matthew.
Love
Yeah.
Hate continues with the
I'm gonna
quarterbacks right after this.
Yeah, it's an emotional game. You know, I try to be as even-keeled as I can, and you know, when I have to be, I am. But you know, when the game's out of reach, and you know, we aren't doing the things that we need to do, in my opinion, then you know, I'm going to get frustrated. Like I said, we're competitive people. It's an emotional game. We're leaving all we have out there, and you know, sometimes things get a little heated.
Love-hate quarterbacks. That was Joe Burrow on some frustration caught between him and his head coach. But that happens still.
Sure.
Joe Burrow headlines the love list. Not worried about him.
Yeah,
He'll
proud
blow
fantasy.
up on the sideline. No worries.
Yeah, anytime you're playing at an MVP level and your team can't compete week in, week out, like there's only so much proud fantasy life investor Joe Burrow can do. It'll be interesting to see. Here's but we've talked about this. Zach Taylor's not going anywhere because the owner is so cheap. There's no way he's going to pay him out. So,
And where does he rank on their problems right now, Zach Taylor?
well,
It's some players on defense.
I mean,
Yes.
well, I know, but they always underperform at the start of the season. Regardless, none of that matters. Here's what matters. If you have Joe Burrow, you're going to be happy. You're starting him this week. I'm as a top 4 fantasy play as well. Browns allow the most yards per completion. Teams that face the Browns actually have the highest average depth of target as well. And since week 8, no quarterback has a higher red zone pass attempt number than Joe Burrow. Like they get in close, he's throwing, right? They throw deep. They throw all over the place. So Joe Burrow should have another big game today. This week, I should say, he's my QB4.
Top 5 play, Joe Burrow. Baker Mayfield next on the list here, Jay. The Bucs have a top 5 team implied total. Baker's been as solid as they come in fantasy all season. That should continue.
Yep, same reasons why we expect Mike Evans to have a really good game. Obviously, the Bucs, their implied team total 26 against the Cowboys in prime time. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they sail over that. Very favorable matchup against the suspect Cowboys defense. Again, like I said, if they don't get pressure, they don't hold up on the back end, and I don't think they're going to get a lot of pressure on Baker.
Since week 6, the only quarterbacks not to get at least 17 fantasy points against the Cowboys are Bryce Young, Drew Lock, and CJ Stroud. So Baker Mayfield, who's playing at such a high level, should have a big game. Feels like the Cowboys always play worse at home for some reason as well. Maybe they'll lower the shades in this one, but Baker should eat once again.
Outdoor Jared Goff against the Bears makes the love list, and
You
that
heard
just goes to show you how bad the Bears have been against quarterbacks right now. Since week 11, they're allowing a league high 9.1 passing yards per attempt.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, they're 28th in pass defense in the last 6 games. They're giving up 18 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And you think about how they attack a passer, right? Chicago plays zone coverage at the 8th highest rate in the NFL. And when he's facing zone, Goff actually plays very well. He's top 5 in terms of touchdown passes and yards per attempt when he faces zone. So I actually do think, I know it's kind of crazy, but outdoor against Chicago, I do like Jared Goff this week. He's my QB8.
Some others receiving votes. Aaron Rodgers again, and that came to fruition last week, Matthew, because Aaron Rodgers had a big week against Jacksonville. He's got the Rams this week. He's QB10. Drake Maye, QB12 against the Bills, and Caleb Williams, who should be chasing plenty of points. He's QB13 against those Lions.
Yeah, look, obviously the Lions are missing a bunch of defensive starters here as well. And over the last 3 weeks, they're giving up 8.9 yards per pass attempt. That is the most in the NFL. So in negative game script, I do think Caleb's going to be throwing and be successful. I do think he's a top 15-ish play as well. Drake Maye's had at least 17 fantasy points in 3 of his past 4. Again, he should be down and throwing against a Bills defense that's allowed multiple touchdown passes in 5 of the last 6. And Aaron Rodgers, like it's exciting for Jets fans because your dreams have come true. Aaron Rodgers matters in the playoffs. Now, it's the fantasy playoffs, of course, not the real NFL playoffs.
And for the Rams' playoff chances.
Yeah, and to the Rams' playoff chances. But he's had multiple touchdown passes in 3 of the past 4 games for Rodgers. They actually, since week 11, lead the NFL in red zone passing rate. So Rodgers padding his stats, trying to get a job next year as well. He's QB10. He's been in a media spat this week. Feels like anytime that he's in a media spat that he tries to go out and make his point with his playing on the field.
I'm not sure he can do it anymore. I'm not sure he can make the statement.
Whatever you think he has been viable in fantasy the last couple of weeks. That's the only argument here. He's in others receiving votes.
Stupid Dev has him rostered. Be careful.
Oh yeah, sneaky Dev.
Yes.
Slimy Dev.
Slippery.
Slippery Dev. Yes.
All right, the hate list headlined by Justin Herbert tonight, Thursday Night Football. He's QB 25 in points per game over the past 4 weeks. That is just 13.3 points per game. Jay, tough draw against Denver.
Yep, and he's banged up as well, and it doesn't seem like he can move that great. Denver have the #1 pass defense in the NFL by EPA per play by margin. They're in Tier 1 by themselves, so a very tough matchup for Herbert.
Since week 2, only 2 quarterbacks have scored more than 17 points against the Broncos. Over-under in this game, 42. We just don't expect a lot of scoring.
CJ Stroud, our last quarterback on the hate list here, Matthew. This is the most maybe unbelievable stat in fantasy this year. He hasn't finished higher than QB 14 since week 4. And this was a guy drafted in the top 7 quarterbacks across drafts all summer.
He's quietly been a pretty big bust. Over the last month, the Chiefs allowed the fewest fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. And when C.J. Stroud's been on the road this year, he's averaging under 13 fantasy points per game. So he's not good on the road, and now he has to go to a tough environment in Arrowhead as well. He's merely my QB 20. Let's face it, if you made the fantasy playoffs, you did it because you found somebody other than C.J. Stroud, or you made it despite him, not because of him. Find a streamer this week.
Stroud makes the hate list, but we love Saturday football. 2 division winners clash in this weekend's NBC Holiday Special as Stroud and the Texans head to Arrowhead to take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Saturday, noon Eastern on NBC and Peacock. We're taking our last break. One more back still to come. Our favorite bets for Thursday Night Football. Last call is next. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
Oh, the crown is yours.
The crown is yours.
Oh, crown might be yours. Nope, actually, I just checked. It's definitely yours.
Last call. Let's take a look at the most bet player props for Thursday Night Football. Broncos, Chargers. Bo Nix rushing yards tops the group here, guys. Jay, what do you like in this game, which could be an ugly Thursday Night Football game?
Going with Devon Art Vandelay. Art Valet. It's a 1990s reference for you, Matthew.
Yes, thank you.
Devon Valet, he went 4 for 78 when they played the Chargers last time. I understand he didn't do anything against the Colts. He had 0 receptions, but still played the second most snaps on the team. 4 wide receivers. So Devon Valet, underlying stats on him, separation metrics are great. I think that he will go over 31.5 receiving yards.
I'm also putting my faith in the Broncos passing attack here. Give me Cortland Sutton over 60.5 receiving yards. Yes, also didn't get to this number against the Colts, but prior to that, 6 straight games he hit this number. So 6 of the last 7. Last 4 weeks, the Chargers have given the 7th most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers. They got lit up by Mike Evans and the Bucs last week. Give me Cortland Sutton over 60.5 receiving yards tonight.
I'm going to roll with the Broncos defense and trust them to keep Gus Edwards' longest rush under 10.5 yards. He's played 10 games this season. He's only done this twice, and he did it by 1 yard and 2 yards. Sometimes he's done it. So Gus Edwards, longest rush under 10.5 yards. Broncos defense, especially that front, they've been very, very good.
I like it. Here are some of my ranks for tonight as well. Not a lot of fantasy value to be. I mean, the only guy that you can really, I think, consider is McConkey, who might be McConkulous, and Sutton. Both guys are wide receiver 3s, flex plays today. I mean, Stone Smart is tight end 20. I mean, Nix and Herbert both outside my top 18. The running backs on both sides, I think, will be a mixture here. Cameron Dicker. If you play in leagues where you use a kicker, I kind of like Cameron Dicker tonight. But other than that, and you're playing the defenses here, especially the Broncos defense. But
it's tough.
That is a rough list. American needs J.K. Dobbins back next week.
Yeah, desperately. This is other than maybe Sutton or McConkey. I can't imagine you're starting anyone with confidence in this game tonight. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay, for Connor, for Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. I'm Matthew Berry. We'll see you tomorrow. Go read, love, hate. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.